It's about to go down with Marc and Cathey, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Marc and Cathey coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and action.
Hey, everybody, I'm Cathey Armillas.
And I am Marc Williams, and welcome to the wrap-up of season 7. Cathey, it's been 7 seasons.
7 seasons!
Oh, man. 71 awesome people. And we had some great conversations this past season. And, you know, it's so funny. We've never talked about this, but getting those hands clapped together, going off all of that energy. Behind the scenes, people
This is a behind the scenes thing right now. Every time we have a guest on, we say, hey, let's make some fire. Let's get this conversation going. Whew, and then release the extra. We do it. We've done that with 71 people. So I love this, Marc. This is the first time ever after 7 seasons that it's just you and I. We decided we were going to wrap this up just with you and I, and we're going to talk through every single one of the 10 episodes. The reason we have 71 is because our voice of God, Mark Brown, who did the voice on our opening, we also interviewed him. So he's kind of that bonus. He was our pilot episode. So it's been 70 guests, 70 shows, Marc.
And counting.
And counting. We're not done. We are not done. I love this. So I hope, we're kind of talking about one of the things that would be fun for the audience is to talk about some of the behind the scenes, right? So some of the things that happened before and after the show, things that have happened since we've had the show, some of our thoughts, some of the ways some of the ideas affected us and conversations that we had, and just everything, just being able to take how we've heard all these really great ideas and what has happened with these ideas.
Well, then let's get started.
Let's go. All right.
So season 7 started, right, with Nina. Nina Bird. And here's what I remember the most about this conversation. And we've had a couple of conversations like this, but this one really rings true for me. Nina had answers for everything. Like, I felt it was almost like nothing we could add.
That's so true. I mean, Nina is she's very thorough, very thoughtful, very kind, but you're right. There's like nothing that I felt like, what can we add here? You have thought about everything, Nina. It was so great.
Like, Nina, just take over. Just take over.
And, it hit me, Marc, when I was like, here, when she said that thing, like we put a lot of thought and creativity into our social media or what we'll wear, but we don't put that much thought into creating experiences for our life. She really punched me in the gut with that. Yeah.
And I tell you, it got me thinking a lot. And I think the phrase that really got me going after that conversation was replayed moments.
Yeah.
Those replayed moments in your life. Like, we should all have our own human highlight reel, right?
Yep. Yeah, and what would those replayed moments be? She kind of touched on that. Those are the important moments.
First of all, one of the things she said is they have to be emotional experiences, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then she talked about that app and the whole idea of a 1 second capturing a moment. A lot of people talk about gratitude, right? But what about those emotional moments during the day that capture? Like, can I tell you? Mm-hmm. Here's my emotional moment, my replayable moment from just yesterday.
Oh, okay.
My youngest, my man Dylan, he wanted to go out and get cookies from Chip City, right? Mm-hmm. And by the way, Cathey, next time you come to New York, I gotta take you to Chip City.
Chip City, never heard of it.
Oh, amazing. I mean, I know you like to avoid the sugar, but on this one particular day, we might have to throw some sugar at you, right?
Okay.
But with that said, we're driving back, and in New York, it's hard to find a parking spot.
Mm-hmm.
I offered to drop him off so I could look for the parking spot in all the rain that was coming down. And in one moment, he says something. He said, no. I was like, wait, what? He said, no, because when I want us to be able to get home and stay home. And he felt bad about the idea of me having to come back out and look for a parking spot. So he was going to stick with me until the moment that we found the parking spot and we could bring the cookies in together.
Oh,
Right?
that's so great. I love that. Such a good, those moments, you're right? Like they stick. And that's, what's funny about that moment, because she was talking a lot about being intentional. And sometimes though, the replayed moments, sometimes they're not intentional. It's just a moment that happened like that with Dylan. That's awesome. I'm going to tell you really quick about intentional.
You got to be intentional about remembering, even when they're
That's true. No, that's true.
About replaying those moments, because you'll forget them in the history of book of life. You'll forget a lot of great moments.
And that's why I'm always telling people to put stuff in their story file, right, Mark? Get that in your story file because you'll forget it. It's so true. But it's such a great moment. I'm going to tell you about a quick moment that I know you know of, but that was planned and was intentional. And then it did end up becoming powerful in many different ways, not just the way that you expect. But, we planned this trip to take my father-in-law to Yosemite. And we knew it was going to be one of his last trips ever. He's had a couple of strokes. He had advanced dementia. And so it was becoming more and more difficult for my mother-in-law to take care of him. But so it was beautiful. We wanted to take them back to their place where they had their honeymoon, which was Yosemite National Park. And he had been going there for 80 years. And so we took him on this big trip, and he gets there and it was intentional about what we did to get there, right? But then the moments we could have never guessed how beautiful they would be. Him telling us where Yosemite Falls one was, and we were arguing with him and saying that's not where it is, and then come to find out he's right and we're wrong, and then on the way home, my father-in-law started throwing up, and we ended up having to take him to a hospital. And the story that happens from that is he actually passed away, but he passed away a couple of weeks later. But you know what I've been talking to with Leanne, my mother-in-law, she loved the fact that we created this moment, and she's so grateful that's how it played out. It played out in such a beautiful way, as opposed to just being home. So being able to create those moments that Nina talked about, I think they're so important. They're so incredibly important. And they don't always have to be great, right? But they're intentional.
Yeah. Well, listen, I hope that she continues to reach as many people as possible, to get so many people coming up with their replayable moments, their intentional moments, those 1 second moments of joy and happiness, and emotional experiences. That was an awesome idea. Again, she outsmarted us in every single way. I don't think there was a question we asked her that could have stumped her. But I'm so glad that we had that conversation.
Me too. And I love Nina. She's so great. Please check out that episode. It was amazing. Okay. Episode number 2 was Elle, and Elle had and I love this because Elle has been my friend forever, and I still have a really hard time pronouncing her last name. Remember, she told us the poetic way, but it's Sarah. Yeah. Say it.
Saramaga, or is it Saramaga?
Right? Saramaga. I think it's Saramaga. And she's gonna kill me when she watches this, although she knows. But Elle had a life-threatening experience happen to her, and she ended up basically having a near-death experience, which already is an experience that, not a lot of people experience. A lot of people have their different thoughts on it. So I loved her way of coming at it, of being like, I'm not here to tell you what to think or what not to think. I'm just going to tell you my experience. And so we had a great conversation with her. And Mark, tell us the story about remember the story? She drops this funny story in the middle of telling us this terrible, being able to hear everybody. She drops this story about getting her head shaved.
Right. So she's laying on the table. She's there. She's not there, right? Because that's the whole NDE thing. And her family has to make this decision because they have to cut her hair out. But it's a weave, and her mom's like, the weave looks like a rat nest, right? And I think it gave her mom PSD about any future things that may happen. She's like, "You sure you want to get that weave? Because we might have to cut it out again." It was so hilarious.
Oh, it was such a great story. And she brought some levity and some laughter to this spot that could have been so hard. So that was really funny. I also love that her daughter, who's a teenager, nobody believed her, but her daughter was the one that was like, my mom's coming back. And she felt it. She had some kind of like intuition when everybody else was like telling her, "Oh, sweetie, we're so sorry. You just don't understand how." They basically were kind of treating her like a kid and saying, "You just don't understand how this works. She's not coming back." And that was a really powerful moment to me, Yeah. Anyway, that was a beautiful part. She's got one daughter, and her daughter was really understood that she was going to come back.
Yeah, I tell you, here's a word that I would swap for powerful or even beautiful. Based on our conversation, is the word juicy.
Oh, juicy. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we had that whole conversation because one of the things that she said is everybody wants to hear about her NDEs, right? And she gets invited to speak about it, and she's got so many different details and not enough time to share everything. So how do you figure out which part of the story to tell? Like, what are the juicy parts?
The juicy details. Yeah. I love that too, Mark. Yeah, that was a fun part for you and I, because when we're teaching storytelling, we're like, oh, yeah, you can tell so many details about a story, but what are those vivid details? What are the juicy parts? And then trying to figure out which audience would care about which ones. Right. I mean, so yeah, that was really fun. And she had so many juicy ones. Her stories were just funny. They were downright funny, and then just inspirational, just being able to the thing I take away also from her whole experience is you really have to be an advocate for people that you love and for yourself. I mean, at some point people will stop believing in you, even to the point of your life. And so these near-death experiences, I think, have brought, especially for her, a real powerful experience for her to be able to learn how to be an advocate.
No, that was awesome. Awesome. Everybody should definitely check out that episode. I think this is it. Even if you don't relate or can't understand or maybe have a hard time, believing, I think that the conversation that Elle inspired us to have can impact so many different people, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody's telling a story, right?
Yeah.
Some of us have stories that seem unbelievable, right? But we've all got a story to tell, and we all just got to find that part of the story that makes people want to lean in and listen some more.
Yeah.
Really appreciated that. So definitely people should check that one out. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, episode 3, we had Shima Miyabadi. Shima. I remember when we first met, I met Shima before you, but when we all got together in one room and we were just talking and organically, as we love to do, and she mentioned her love for volunteering. And I'm going to let you tell everybody or remind everybody about how she got into it. But the thing that really struck me from that conversation before the episode was that line that we said needs to go on a shirt. Like,
sure. Yeah, that's exactly what we said. Like, we have a shirt.
Why volunteering works. Awesome line. Awesome line.
Yeah. And I think we said that the t-shirt should just say volunteering works, right? Because we thought that would be catchy. Oh my God, I love that. So here I am at, her architectural firm that she works at, and the three of us are there, and we're talking about how, she started getting into volunteering, how she loves it. And I was really fascinated because she said when she first moved to New York City, she didn't know anybody. And to be in a city of millions and millions of people and not know anybody is a shame. And so when she said, yeah, I started like looking for meaningful ways to connect with people. And I thought, why not volunteering? I would love that. I would love that. And so she started looking through the organizations. And when she came across Best Buddies, which I had never heard of this organization until her, and talk about an organization that's doing some great work, then to say that she had a personal connection to it, because what Best Buddies does is they connect you with a buddy who becomes your best buddy, right? But everybody that's in that organization has some kind of disability, whether that be a physical disability, or like she would come to say the connection was with her uncle, right? Who had an intellectual disability. Oh, and how passionate she is for that organization and all the hard work that she does for them and how many friends she has made. And then we started talking about, then you're meeting people that have the same kind of goals and passion and heart that you do. It's like the easiest way in the world to make friends.
Yeah,
I love that story.
Yeah, no, it was an amazing story. And I love how she said, she had such humility about her, even through the end of the conversation, where she said, I don't even know if I'm really an ambassador for volunteering, right?
And we're like, what?
But she really put secret sauce to it. And so much of it was, when she said at the end, I thought that I kind of just picked organizations randomly until I realized, as you just pointed out, Cathey, that she had a personal connection. And that was her advice for everybody. Like, everybody should volunteer and everybody should look for that personal connection. But even if you don't find an organization to volunteer for, everybody can practice volunteering every day.
Everywhere. Oh, I loved that. Yes, I love that. That was the golden nugget. And, you and I, like, coaching people on their ideas, I thought was the thing that we really clung on to, because that was something that people could do everywhere. If you were listening to that as a TED Talk, you would be like, how can I volunteer in my day to day? How can I volunteer like everywhere? I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
Man, that's a challenge. That's a challenge. That's a game.
That is a game
to play.
And we're passing that on to everybody that's listening. How can you volunteer right where you're at every day? And it could be just a little thing, I love it. I love it. I love that. Well, our fourth episode was Dr. Gary Sanchez. Oh, his story is great. He's a dentist who is doing great at dentistry. He was a great dentist. He said one of the things, he didn't actually say this. This is what I took from what he said, right? Is that he was not just going to be a dentist. He was going to be a great dentist, right? He was the guy that was like, oh, I'm going to, he had found things that he could patent in the dentistry field. And, he was always like trying to further dentistry. And I could see that in, meeting Gary, just knowing that that's the type of person he is, that he's going to like go and make it better. And so he's going on doing dentist things and making the dentist world a better place to be. And all of a sudden he goes to Burning Man and then he gets a big headache because, Burning Man's a lot. And he takes 2 Advil, goes to bed and wakes up with a horrible stomach ache, ends up having to go to the emergency room, finds out that the Advil that he took in his stomach, like, had actually dissolved a hole through his stomach. And then all of a sudden became this critical situation where he could have died. Long story short, he didn't die. He was on our show. And he had a client end up telling him, like, what was the story? Like, I think the client said, like, if you had died, would you have felt happy with all the accomplishments that you did, or you have felt happy with what you're doing? And Gary thought about it and was like, no. And so he kind of went on this journey to find his own why. So that's kind of where it started, right?
Yeah. He went from being what'd you say? He went from being the doctor of teeth
to the doctor of why. Yep, that's exactly. Yep. He went from being the doctor of teeth to the doctor of why. Yep.
But you know what I love? That he took it to another level, right? Because and this was the thing with his idea. Sometimes we get people who have an idea that's similar to other things that we've heard. And Cathey, let me just tell everybody, one of the things that I love that you do during our conversations is when you hear something that sounds similar, you push. You push that creativity, and I love you for it because I think people need that, right? And you pushed. And listen, he had already been pushed way before our conversation because
Clearly.
right. He wasn't just the why, but he was what the why and the how and the what. And he had us take the quiz, and I've taken that information in so many different places in terms of my how, why, my how, and my what. So I love that we're always pushing people to think past what we've heard before.
Right.
He did that really well. I think he did that.
Yeah, you do the same thing too, Marc. I appreciate it because you always ask, you just do it in a different way. Like you ask a hard question. And I can't tell you how many times, and Gary in particular on this show said, I forgot what you asked him exactly, but he said, that's a great question, Marc. That's a really great question. And, so I remember that our show went a couple of different variations of how he could take his, finding people's why and turn it into their what and their how as well. And how he could position that quicker to get people to want to take his test and to want to go down that route. It's not just about finding your why. It's about finding your how and what as well. And I love that. And so he, like you said, he already had a system. I love working with people that have already done some of the work because I think we can help fine tune that idea. And we really did that well for him in that show. It was really...
Yeah. No. I love the idea conversation. I think he said something to the effect after we done, like, whatever we just went through, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
It really opened up my mind.
It definitely, for sure. Oh my God. And I love after we took the test too, Marc, that both of us heard. I got to hear how he described you. And then you got to hear how he described me based on the tests that we independently took. And I was like, that's 100,000% Marc. And you said the same about me, right?
Point. He's really system.
So he has a great system. So it was just fun to kind of dissect that. And I think you even came up with it's the order of asking the right questions, right? That was like.
Yes, because he talked about how when opening up any kind of training or anything on this, there are so many different questions and so many different entry points, right? And to your point earlier, depending on who you're speaking to, there might be a different entry point, which means there might be a different starting question. So you've got all of these different questions. It's just, do I ask this one first on this occasion? Do I ask this one next on the next occasion? And just kind of figuring out that mental game, that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really worked for him. So I can't wait to hear more from Dr. Gary Sands.
The why doctor. Doctor of why.
Doctor.
Why, how, and what, right?
Yes. And he's not the only one who's come up with systems that we talked to. Remember when we spoke to Margarita, episode 5?
Episode 5, yep.
Her system is this 360 model.
Yeah.
Right. And she's gone into corporations and she's taught this 360 model, which is about understanding what an employer and an employee can bring to the system. Like, well, how do we find out what's that? And here's a Cathey special. I always call you the queen of concepts. Right?
You're the queen of questions. I'm the queen of concepts. You're the king of, not the queen, the king. So you could be the queen if you want. And I could be the king of concepts.
There you go.
You can go either way.
When you came up with this whole idea of that invisible quality, she spoke about there are things about us that we would love people to see that they don't see, right? And what is it? Because whatever that thing is, it can bring great value to other people, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what it is, Marc, too? And it's so funny how similar it is to what we try to do with people when we're talking to them. Like they're really close to their ideas. And so we're like, ooh, what's that invisible thing that they might not be able to see? that could really make a connection with their audiences. But she really blew my mind, because a lot of people do these 360 model things. That didn't resonate with me at all, because other people have done it. But when she really got deep into it, and that's where the invisibleness came in with her as well, was she said many times we're always pushing the employer to be like, how can you be a better employer? And she's like, awesome, I definitely advocate for that. But then I also really want to challenge the employees. If the employer is doing their job and they're providing for me and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, am I doing my part too? Ooh, and I love that. But then that's when we got even deeper on that, because it was like, maybe sometimes the employer doesn't know that you're really great at this thing that's kind of invisible. Like, who knew that, your job description might be this one thing, but you've disengaged because you're actually really good at this other thing. So,
I got to tell you, this is so common. People get hired to do jobs, and then they get stuck in just doing that job, and they may become excellent at it.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's something else that they could be doing to add to it that nobody even knows.
Yeah. Yep. And they have this burning desire. Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that it's not just the employers or the supervisors or the manager's responsibility to see that, but how are you bringing light to your invisible quality?
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that. And on a fun special note, one of the first things I said to Margarita before we even started recording the show, if you will, was she showed up with this beautiful dress on. And so I just want to call that out again. She showed up so beautifully, and she's such a beautiful person. Another little connection on the behind the scenes. She wrote a book because her dad went through dementia and so she wrote a book about it. And she ended up sending me the book, and I gave it to my mother-in-law before my father-in-law passed. And so she was reading the book and found a lot of value and connection to that. So behind the scenes, that was beautiful. I love that. Yeah. Margarita Estrada, our season number 5. So then we moved to episode number 6, Cage Leitner. Cage. Now, Cage is amazing. Cage opened up. He's been very public about his story about being born as a woman, and then how he transgendered into a man. And so he kind of talked about that at the beginning, and then talked about some of the things that he has experienced through some of that process, and how he landed on starting this club called the Portland Community Football Club. So for those of us Americans that, it's not that football. It's the one with the feet, the one we call soccer, the one the rest of the world, calls football or football. But what I love about Cage is he's so positive, and he's so focused on finding the right way to do things. And so what we ended up talking about was he was coming up with this new campaign. And he's been working with an agency on coming up with this. But remember, this whole campaign was Liberate Sports. And so Liberate Sports was a campaign to help underprivileged kids get into sports, and to liberate sports in all kinds of ways for women. And so, one of the things that happened after we had our episode, almost immediately after, was his organization teamed up with this now kind of like pretty famous new bar in Portland, Oregon, that started called the Sports Bra. It's a bar that only highlights and showcases and features women's sports. It's so awesome. So those two teamed up together, and they went downtown Portland into Pioneer Square and had over 4,000 people show up to the event of the United States women playing their first game of the World Cup against Vietnam. They had Vietnam vendors. I think they had 3 to 4 Vietnam food trucks out there. They celebrated everything, Mark, and they raised over $10,000. Like, amazing.
That's awesome.
So he took that idea that we talked about, which, again, here's another case of somebody like, we didn't come up with the idea on the show, right? I just want to put that out there. But we helped have the conversation about how to further it. And then he goes and has this event, and you know, kind of blows this idea up even bigger.
And you know, one of the things that really got to me in that whole conversation is Cage started this because he has an affinity and a passion for helping those who are often made to feel like outsiders, right? And even that phrase outsiders can have such, you know, I'm not even going to call it a negative connotation, sometimes a hurtful connotation. And for us to talk through that and then to basically put an empowering connotation on the word outsider, right? At the end, it was like, what makes you an outsider?
Yeah.
And if everybody can see themselves as an outsider, they can start to see that they belong. It's like the world of misfits. We're all misfits, Cathey. We're all misfits.
In some way, shape, or form, right? I agree. And didn't, I don't know who brought it up, but remember we were talking about having like there'd even be you could even see a billboard if this were part of the campaign of like, what makes you an outsider, you know? Also, another thing I wanted to mention as an update, because he kind of sent this to us, and so I love that. They're having a big, spring 2024. They're going to have this big fundraiser. So they're constantly working on that, but they're doubling down on the liberation theme. And so that's kind of what they're talking about. So they're creating like an exclusive club, for people to sponsor and to be a part of it. And I love it. It gives people an opportunity. It gives people an opportunity to be able to connect with people that might feel like they're an outsider, and so there's many different ways that people can kind of help out with that. And I love that too, is like, I always love to think about when somebody starts an organization, you don't have to be in love with soccer to be in love with the fact that liberation in sports should be a thing, right? You don't have to be in love with the actual event, but you're kind of connect to this theme of liberation. So I love that a lot.
Absolutely. All right, Cathey, I in my head, I'm already thinking, so what makes me an outsider?
Yeah. Right.
And, for me, it always goes back, my earliest memory of feeling like an outsider was through music. Remember sitting in my elementary school where everybody was probably listening to East Coast hip hop legends. Shout out to 50 years of hip hop, by the way.
Yeah, shout out. Yes, 50 years. Let's go.
I'm sure I had a whole lot of classmates who would listen to old school, classic, legendary hip hop artists of the time. And here I am in the cafeteria, lip syncing or probably singing out loud to Hold Me Now by the Thompson Twins.
Oh my gosh. It's not just that, Mark. We know because of your world champion speech, we also know that you like Alvin and the Chipmunks. It was like the country album or something like that, right?
Yes. But you know what? Here's what's funny. I'm about to expose all of my musical tastes, but
oh no, here we go.
No, but here's what I would say. When I think about the topic of music and being an outsider, I often think about boy bands, right? And I've had my share of friends who have trashed boy band music, right? And yet, here's what we've always figured out. You can't be that popular if you're only targeting one demographic, right?
That's true. That's super true, right?
There's a lot of closet fans out there who are outsiders who are really on the inside.
Yeah, they're closeted. That's true. Okay, I'm going to tell you a fun little fact really quick because I'm sure you've seen this take it by storm. I knew that Taylor Swift was popular, but I had no idea how popular she was. Like, I mean, the people that are going to her show. Oh, and let's not forget Beyonce. I knew Beyonce though. Like Beyonce's like easy for every segment to love. That's kind of a dialing it in. That's easy. Beyonce, everybody can like love her. But Taylor Swift, always talking about breakups and, with boys. And that is kind of the opposite of the boy band. It's kind of she could be labeled as the whiny girl, breakup singer, and everybody loves her.
Everybody's a Swiftie.
Everybody's a Swiftie. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I agree with that. I would say my outsiderness also, Mark, actually ties back to what Cage talked about. Actually, I grew up, with some rough background with my parents splitting up and us moving to Los Angeles when I was really young. And I really clung on to sports. And so I really got that sports competitive energy from when I was young. And I quickly just like really connected with being a tomboy. And that was just not very popular when you're young. Boys made fun of me, and as I got older, I found a way to find my strength in my outsiderness, if you will. But yeah, we can definitely relate to these things that could make us an outsider. So that's what was so beautiful about Cage's idea. It goes across all mediums, all people, all generations. Everybody can feel it.
Yeah, we don't even have to imagine a world full of outsiders, because the world is already filled with outsiders, and that's what really brings us together. Love that conversation with Cage. Absolutely.
I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But I got to tell you, then it reminds me of episode 7, right?
Yeah.
And we talked to John Glosick, who always makes me laugh. And to kind of piggyback off of this conversation with Cage, John was trying to fit in for so many different other reasons, right? Like he wanted to play in the band because he had a crush on a girl. That's how he wanted to fit.
I know, that's how you became a musician. That's so wild.
But he was too. I think it was he was too sick, or he couldn't play the woodwind instrument, so he had to start playing the drums. Nothing like magnified him or attracted him to playing drums, except some completely unexpected thing. And then he goes on to become so fascinated with drumming that he puts out a drum magazine, meets some of the most famous, most talented drummers in the world. And yeah, and then all of a sudden this passion became this business.
Yeah.
Drum magazine. And then he does the same with golf, right? Now, I know you love this story, so I'm gonna let you tell the story about how he became a publisher of a golfing magazine.
Oh, I love this story because I feel like I had a similar connection to him. I remember when I was in my early 20s and I was working for a Korean company, and there were 2 Korean brothers, and I ended up traveling all over the world to these these glass conferences because we manufactured glass beveling machinery. And when he started talking about this company that he worked for, and he was really young, and I think it was some kind of like financial company, like insurance or financial thing. What I remember the most, though, was that he just felt like an outsider. Funny enough, we're going to tap back to Cages for a second. And he just felt like he couldn't get in with his boss. But what he noticed is that his boss and them would like leave work early to go play golf. And he was like, I want some of that. Like I would love to connect with them, but B, can I like get off work early? And John is hilarious. He also is a comedian too. He really is a comedian, actually. He says he's not really practicing it anymore, but there's only talking to John for 5 minutes to know that he's a comedian. But I thought it was a really funny story, Mark, because again, his initial like wanting to learn golf was just to kind of play hooky at work. Right. And he really connected with his boss and the people that were playing golf and the clients and whatnot. But he got really into golf and then was like, why don't I do a golf magazine? So now I got a drumming magazine. And at one point he had both of the magazines going at the same time. Like, it's wild.
Yes. I think he said something like for 27 years, he never thought about golf. And then all of a sudden in his 28th year, all of a sudden he's a golf aficionado, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. I love that. So I thought it was a really good idea too for people to look at. So when we looked at it, we're like, okay, what's the idea though? Because that's John's story, but then what's the idea for the people watching? And we kind of picked apart like how you could make something that your passion could make it your business. But then some of the things that came up, remember, like it's really hard. Like people, I remember him saying that it's really hard. People were like, oh, cool, you're doing you have a golf, magazine. Oh, that must be really tough. And he's like, actually, it's really hard. I'd rather be actually playing golf than, making this into a business or making this magazine. It's not easy. So that was another cool piece of it too.
And I'm so glad that he brought that up and that you just brought light to it as well, because we often hear, follow your passion. What if you get paid for doing what you love to do? And I love the fact that he dispelled this myth that if you can do what you love to do, it'll be easy. But it's hard work. It's
still hard work. It's still a business. Still have to write articles. Still have to get all the, still have to do all the logistics, Yeah. Still have to deal with all the things that come along in the publishing world, which is really hard, Yeah,
but he's doing it. He's been a great model for it. And I can't wait to read more of his, because he said that his drumming magazine, he's going to bring it back. So
yeah, I love that. I love that. And Matt, we didn't really chat about that with him on the show, but you and I were chatting about that behind the scenes after. I think it would be hilarious if we showed some of the conversations that we had like we're still rolling tape and we're like having these great conversations, even the conversations sometimes that we have with the people on the show when we've kind of gone, okay, that's a wrap. And then we'll say some beautiful things after the fact, But I remember it, one of the things that you had said about John, that you really connected with him as a person because you've known him for a while, and is just that how he's willing to go that deep with things that he loves. And like he takes it to the deepest level possible.
One of my favorite stories with John is he was working with a well-known sales guru, and he's just kind of helping them give out books and set up stuff and things like that. And it turned out that they needed electrical tape to put down the wires. And he's like, all right, I'll go and find electrical tape. And it was just finding electrical tape and putting himself in the proximity of somebody who's doing something amazing that really caught the attention of this guy, Jeffrey Gitomer. And, John just said that's one of the other pieces of that secret sauce to turning your passion into your business. Now, he's amazing. I love learning from him. I love laughing with him. I'm so glad. And, it's funny. I remember writing to him and saying, listen, we need you on season 7. And he was like, oh, so you've had 6 other seasons?
Yep, I know that was the first thing he said. And then, I think we're like, oh, it could be worse. We could have called you on season 10, Oh, yeah. To any of our future, guests on our show, I promise you, Mark and I have a long list of people that we had written out from day one. And so you're on that list somewhere, but it's all about timing and putting it together. So John, we loved having you on the show. We did not think of you out of desperation. You were there because you're awesome. Yeah. But it brings us to number 8, episode number 8, Roxy Azuri. Oh my God, Mark, when you introduced me to her, I was just like, what? There is this amazingly talented spoken word poet, beautiful, like an advocate for justice across many spectrums. Like when I met her, I couldn't believe how she took and meshed this world together. And she's just in my mind, she's a world-class poet. I mean, she's just, if you look her up, she's out there doing stuff. And I think she's even competed right.
Yes.
But one of the things that I loved about hers, we ended up, I want you to tell the story though, because like she's your friend and I want you to tell the story. But the reason we got to the idea that we ended up having with her on the show came from this story. So yeah, tell me the story, Mark.
So Roxy's telling this story, one of her favorite stories to tell, because she's also a storytelling coach. And she tells a story about really taking this one guy on a tour around New York City, an older gentleman, and he didn't speak English, but he was clearly fascinated. And he just wanted to get a picture. Like we all want those pictures like Nina Bird was talking about, right? We all want that shot. And no matter who they asked, nobody would take it. As a matter of fact, there was this one couple that was kind of really belligerent about the fact that they were even being asked to take the picture, and they refused to take the picture. That's the story that Roxy would tell, which, you know, unfortunately sheds a stereotypical light on us New York City people, right? But then she found herself telling that story to someone who then asked her an important question. What happened next?
Ooh.
That's powerful, right?
That's
That's
powerful.
Every time we tell a story, we place the period at the end of the story. What if we change the location of the period by asking ourselves, what happened next? And what I really appreciated about Roxy saying is, this is not necessarily about turning everything into a happy ending. It's just not getting stuck in the moment and realizing that there's another chapter to follow, or there is something that has happened. So what happened next? Where are you placing your period? Reflect and come up with a different ending. Oh, that was awesome.
Oh, so good. And what was even beautiful about that story, what actually happened next was another couple came along, took his picture, and then even said, please don't let what they did taint how you feel. This is not indicative of how, I mean, I'm kind of paraphrasing this in my own words, but it's not indicative of how everybody else feels.
And that's the version of the story that I had always heard. So I've always loved that story because of that ending.
Yeah.
Because of that new ending, the ending that she wasn't telling. So it's a great lesson in terms of storytelling, in terms of messaging, right? Whatever you're prepared to share out there, ask yourself what's next. Like, what's the other part that might be missing? And Roxy was great, but I got to give this nod to you because, and you know, we always tell people completely organic conversations that we're having with people. And at the end, you asked Roxy to perform one of her poems. She blew our mind. Boom!
To see her doing it live, like I had watched her, but to like see her in this context and do it in the moment.
And she was in a zone. She was in a zone.
She was in the zone like no other.
Wait, I gotta say this. And I love when people get into the zone, right? Because when you first asked them, and Roxy was like, which one?
What's my favorite? And then exactly.
And then boom.
And then it was like she was preparing for that moment. Yeah, that was really, really beautiful.
So cool.
I love that.
Yeah, she is a friend. She is a dear friend. I'm so happy that we had her on. She lit us up with her poetry, and then she set us up for a conversation with the one, the only, the class clown of class clowns, Brian Robinson, episode 9. And if you have not read this book about how to pick up women on the subway, trust me, it's not meant to be a real manual. It is a complete joke.
But his stories leading up to how he did the book, all the media attention that he got from it, it's like this episode, you have to go watch it. And I have to preface for anybody watching now, Mark and I are very good friends with Brian Robinson, so we can affectionately call him the class clown of class clowns. He knows he is too. That's not even a thing.
Brian sends us
our text string. I'm going to tell a behind the scenes story really quick about Brian. I'm going to take a left turn for a second. So we were all working with you, Mark, on your world champion of public speaking, the 2 speeches that you were going to do at the finals, which you had to do a qualifying semifinal speech and then your final speech. And so it was me, It was me, you, Mario, and Brian, right? And so we're on this text string together, and we'd be like, oh, we can't meet at 6 p.m. How about we make it 7 or something? And then Brian will send us some silly ass picture of why he can't meet. And like, I mean, just this stuff. And every time, he didn't just ever say it in words. He was sending us, or like he'll send us like a dancing video of him on the subway. And we're like,
he's crazy. He's crazy.
oh,
But I got to tell you, you captured it perfectly. He wrote this book, which is so in tune and aligned with how clownish he could be. But the genius was not so much in the idea, but it was in the implementation.
yeah.
I mean, he got major international media coverage.
Yep.
From putting an idea out there, and how many people would love to take an idea and get it out across the nation, overseas, through the galaxy, whatever.
Yep.
Really like honed in on that. And he said he really wanted to be able to do that with his, shall we call it his serious idea of face it to fix it. And what stood out to me for that is another powerful lesson. We have these ideas and we have these things that we want to do for the world on such a grand scheme, right? Like, how can you change the world? And it seemed that the struggle he was having was taking his idea and trying to fit it into this box of changing the whole world and solving everybody's problem in just one book. But in the conversation, I think we all learned the power of simplifying, right? And not thinking about the big win, but thinking about the small win. And I know sometimes that can even sound cliche, but the way we simplified that message is the reason why I think Face It to Fix It will be on everybody's bookshelf real soon.
Yeah, I know. I love that. That's so true, Mark. And I'm glad that you brought up what we talked about on the show, which was this undertone of how something goes viral, basically. And it really is a commitment to the idea. It's being willing to do something different. It's a commitment to the idea. And so when we talked about the serious one, we had to get into that space where we were like, okay, we're going to be serious. So how do we put that same thought pattern onto it now? Right? Yeah. And we're not going to make this some clownish thing, but we're going to be serious about this. So how do we make this something that could be a good idea for people? And how does he commit to that idea? So I love that. I mean, any good idea, it just goes to show that ideas don't just, they don't spring out of nowhere. They've always been an idea that's been thought about, well planted, well watered, well groomed, well tended to. That's usually the typical route for a great idea.
And he has a great idea, and he's got a mind for many more.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's brilliant. Don't let the clownish ways and his silliness fool you. He's very brilliant. Brian Robinson, our friend, episode number 9. Check it out. Yeah. Right. Check it out. That leads us to our grand finale, and it's really where we're at. This is where we left. This is episode number 10. This is all that's out there right now. Until you're watching this, this is like the wrap of season number 7. My friend, now your friend, Yasmin Wynn. Yes. And so we have actually a funny story about how the 3 of us connected. Should I tell that really quick?
Yes.
Okay. So Yasmin's taking me out for my birthday one day. This is a couple of years ago. And he takes me on this extravagant, and he talks about this in the episode, so I'm not going to get into it too much, but he takes me on this extravagant trip. It's really fun. And then we were out really far, and I didn't have any signal. And when I came back to, I had a message, and I was listening to it, and it was from you, Mark, telling me happy birthday on the phone in this very long, beautiful message. And he was like, it's the nicest, happiest, most joyful message I have heard, with somebody telling somebody happy birthday. And so he asked your permission if he could use it, and because he's been working on this joyful living project for a long time. And you said yes. And then I connected the 2 of you and said, well, you should meet when Yasmin comes to New York. And he did. And you 2 walked the Golden Gate Bridge together, or you didn't walk that day, right?
No,
you didn't walk that. I wanted you to, but you didn't. That's right.
Yes, but we had a beautiful lunch together. We had a
great lunch. And then you ended up walking over the bridge, right? Because you had to get back to Brooklyn. But so now we go to Yasmin and his idea. He took an 18-month journey to find joy because of some of the struggles he has had in his life. And in those 18 months, he realized that joy was something that you could create and you had to gamify it. So that's where he came up with the idea for his book, The Game of Joy. And oh my God, Marc, you just hit him with question after question. Like, talk about like really wanting to get to like, why should somebody have joy in their life? Like these really what seemed to be rudimentary questions. And he was, it was very fun. He said this was the funnest podcast that he's ever been on. And he's been on so many. So it was a really fun episode. But I love, Marc, you should talk about it. I love that you pushed him because you asked him the question, why leave joy at 3.0, right?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I was just fascinated that there's a joy 1.0 and a 2.0 and a 3.0. Like, who has thought about joy in that way, that there's multiple levels of joy? Forget about just defining joy. But then, right, I was so intrigued about, all right, well, let's keep going with this, right? The next episode, right? So what's the next level of joy? Joy 4.0. And he spoke about how that can be really the embodiment, right? Like, I love his metaphor. You know how you toss a rock in the water and it ripples? Like, you didn't even have to toss the rock. Ripple just from your presence. That's awesome.
It is awesome.
That's awesome.
So Marc, you'll be happy to know that he took your 4.0 after the show, which has just been recently, which is so cool. He took your 4.0 to heart. And so Yasmin just recently got invited back to Portland. He got invited back to do a couple of speaking engagements. And one of the speaking engagements was speaking on joyful leadership. But in the midst of that, there was a friend of his who one of her women's groups decided to use Yasmin's book for a book club. And so they were like, oh, we really want to read this book. And so they happened to be having a retreat and Yasmin happened to be here. So he actually did a private workshop for this group on joyful leadership, on how they were women in an industry and how they could show up and be better, joyful leaders. So you really got him thinking, like, how can I take it further and further and further? So now he is like dusting off his speaking skills himself, and he's out there speaking on it. It's so cool. And for those of you who have not heard of the book, The Game of Joy, I mean, he talks about joy blockers. I mean, being a joy ambassador, the concepts in this book that he talks about, and 7 joyful living principles, which are really good. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I got to tell you, I got his book. I started reading it immediately. And then I was at an event earlier this week, and I already started unleashing some of the games. And one of my newest favorite games to play is the game of joy sightings, right? You just walk through the street wherever you live, and you look at billboards and signs and packages, and you look for the word joy, right? And if you're intentionally looking for joy, imagine how many times will you see it. Now, my confession of living in New York City is, when I started playing the game, I scored a whopping score of 0.
0. No.
Oh, so I'm telling you, that's all right. That's all right. I am committed to playing the game. I'm going to keep looking, because that's what we should be doing. And that's why I loved having this conversation with him. It really has permeated and had me thinking about it well beyond this conversation. And, again, how funny is it that we started season 7 with Nina, who pretty much was an expert. And it was like, what are we really going to add to this conversation? And then we finished off episode 10 with Yasmin, who traveled around the country and became an expert. And it was like, well, what else are we going to add?
What are we going to say? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that.
but we all walked away with something from all of these conversations. And that's always been the joyful part of this experience for me. When we ask at the end of each episode, each conversation, how has this changed or transformed for you, or what's different for you? The fact that everybody can walk away and say something that has changed or evolved or landed with them, I think that's all that we can ask for. That's our contribution. And it feels really good to have conversations that are not just for pure entertainment, but trust me, I am so entertained in your presence, Cathey. I'm so entertained.
Same. Are you kidding? Oh, it's so fun to do this show with you, Marc. From the moment we met, I was like, oh, this dude. We might fight about East Coast, West Coast rap and which one's better, but at the end of the day, we can agree that we love R&B, we love hip hop, we love rap, and we also love the art of talking about ideas and storytelling and teaching people. And that was kind of our major connection. And I just want to kind of wrap it up with something you said earlier, Marc, even before we jumped on. You were saying there's so many things that became like, they showed up in many episodes where we're talking about word choices, or we're talking about concepts, or we're talking about using vivid details. And you're so intellectual about those things. That's the academic in you, right? That's the teacher in you. That's teacher Marc showing up of like, I love that we're having fun. We're entertaining. We're talking about people's ideas. We're helping spread those ideas. We're helping them reformat those ideas. And at the same time, we're teaching people how to do them better. So it is really fun to do this with you. And I'm really proud that we're 7 seasons strong right now, and we're still going.
Counting.
We've already recorded episode number 1 of season number 8. So we're going to be dropping that pretty soon, and we're pretty excited.
Stay tuned, everybody. Stay tuned. The fun is going to continue to happen. We live in a world filled with ideas, and even if you think you don't have an idea that is worth sharing, trust us. Cathey says this all the time. There's no such thing as a bad idea, right? We just have to really think about how to reformat, restructure, how to have a conversation about that idea so we can get it out there so people can receive everything that you have to offer. So come on, jump on the website. It's about to go down show. Jump on the YouTube channel. It's about to go down show. Get yourself a shirt.
Yeah.
Got us all these shirts one day. But in any case,
it's a good idea. We're going to sell our shirts.
Come on, it's about to go down everywhere.
Yeah.
It is. So listen, on behalf of Cathey, my sister, thank you for anybody and everybody who's joined us in this journey for 7 glorious seasons. We look forward to all of the people who are going to join us on season 8 and beyond. We love doing this show. We love every time a new idea gets dropped, and we love doing this together. This show, this wonderful experience called It's About to Go Down.